I will grant you all the wealth you desire, but you must spend one night with me. As they lay together, Akachi felt a strange sensation coursing through his body. He had never experienced such pleasure before. The feeling was so surreal. There was once a man named Akachi who lived in a small village near the banks of a river. He was a hard-working and honest man who struggled to make ends meet. Despite his efforts, he could never seem to break out of his cycle of poverty. One day, as he was walking along the river, he came across a beautiful woman who was bathing in the water. She had long dark hair that cascaded down her back, and her skin was as smooth as silk. Akachi was immediately mesmerized by her beauty and couldn't take his eyes off her. As he stood there admiring her, the woman suddenly turned to him and spoke. "I am the river goddess, and I have been watching you, Akachi. I have seen your struggles and your desire for wealth. I can grant you all the riches you desire, but on one condition." Akachi was taken aback by her words. He had always heard stories about the river goddess and her powers, but he never thought he would come face to face with her. He was intrigued by her proposition and asked, "What is the condition, my lady?" The river goddess replied, "I will grant you all the wealth you desire, but you must spend one night with me." Akachi was shocked by her condition. He was a married man, and he knew that it would be a grave sin to cheat on his wife. But the thought of all the riches he could have was too tempting for him to resist. He thought to himself, "Just one night, it won't hurt anyone." And so he agreed to the river goddess's condition, and she led him to a secluded spot by the river. As they lay together, Akachi felt a strange sensation coursing through his body. He had never experienced such pleasure before. The feeling was so surreal. The next morning, when he woke up, Akachi found himself lying on the banks of the river with no sign of the river goddess. He thought it was all just a dream, but when he looked around he saw that his clothes were now made of the finest silk, and his once empty pockets were now filled with gold coins. Overjoyed with his newfound wealth, Akachi returned to his village, where he was welcomed as a rich man. He bought a large house and filled it with all the luxuries he had ever dreamed of. He also started dressing in the finest clothes and became the talk of the village. But as days passed, Akachi noticed that his newfound wealth came at a price. He would often wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, with images of the river goddess haunting him. He would hear her voice calling out to him, and he couldn't shake off the feeling of guilt for betraying his wife. Despite his inner turmoil, Akachi continued to enjoy his riches and lavish lifestyle until one day he received a message from the river goddess. She demanded that he return to the river and fulfill his end of the bargain. Fearful of the consequences but unable to resist the river goddess's power, Akachi returned to the river that night. This time the goddess was not alone. She was accompanied by a young girl who bore a striking resemblance to Akachi. The river goddess spoke. "This is your daughter, Akachi. She was born from our union, and she is now a part of our world. You must take her and care for her as your own." Akachi was horrified by the revelation. He couldn't believe that he had a daughter with the river goddess from just one night together, and that he would now have to raise her. He tried to plead with the goddess, but she said he had no choice. He took the little girl back to his home. His wife was shocked to see a little girl. Akachi spoke with his wife, narrated the whole event to her, and pleaded that she accepted his daughter. The news of Akachi's mermaid daughter and source of wealth spread round the village. The guilt of his actions and recurring nightmare continued to haunt him, and he couldn't forgive himself for what he had done. One day, he decided to seek forgiveness from the river goddess. He went to the river and begged her to release him from the bargain, even if it meant taking back the wealth. The river goddess, pleased with his repentance, granted his wish. She also told him that his daughter would now have to live with her in the river, as she was a part of their world. Akachi was heartbroken to say goodbye to his daughter, but he knew it was for the best. He returned to his village to see all his wealth has disappeared. Akachi started a new life. From that day on, Akachi lived a simple life, but his heart was filled with peace and contentment. He had learned a valuable lesson that wealth and power come at a cost, and true happiness cannot be bought with gold. In the village, Akachi was known as the man who asked for wealth from the river goddess, and has a mermaid daughter, but he was seen as a man who was bold enough to let go of material possessions for his peace and sanity. This story teaches that true happiness cannot be bought with wealth alone, and that making amends for one's mistakes and prioritizing inner peace are more valuable than material possessions. If you enjoyed and learned something from this video, kindly like, comment and share. Don't forget to subscribe as you are helping my channel grow. Thank you.